right, awesome. So hi everyone, I'm a second year graduate student in the social psychology program working with Knowles. And I'm excited to talk to you all today about a line of ongoing work that I have with our collaborators investigating lower social class advantages in social working memory. So inequality contributes to the formation of distinct cultural contexts that shape social cognition. Whereas upper class contexts emphasize autonomy and independence, lower class contexts emphasize interdependence and connectedness. And this has important downstream consequences for how much attention we pay to others. For example, lower class individuals pay more attention to others, whether this be to people passing by on a busy sidewalk, identifying the emotions from the facial expressions of others, or adopting the visual perspective of others. And successful performance on these social cognitive tasks heavily relies on executive functioning and working memory processes in particular. And so despite an abundance of work pointing to lower class advantages in the social domain, decades of work suggest that lower social class is associated with failures in executive functioning and working memory, the same cognitive resources that lower social class is thought to promote when performing social cognitive tasks. However, I'd like to point out that the bulk of this work utilizes stimuli that can be considered highly non-social in nature, such as the Posner queuing task, where participants have to detect the location of dots and shapes, which I would argue tests the component of cognition that is functionally separate from the highly social forms of social cognition, such as identifying the emotions and faces. And so with this past work in mind, the primary question I seek to answer in my work is why would lower social class be associated with enhanced performance in the domain of social cognition, but not the domain of non-social cognition? And in the study I'll present on today, I'll demonstrate that lower social class predicts enhanced social, but not non-social working memory, and that these two domains can be seen as being functionally separate. And so before I get into any data, what do I even mean by social working memory? In the present work, we argue that social working memory is the ability to manage and recall the mental states of others relative to other members within a social network. So one way to operationalize social working memory is to first have participants learn about a social network and the relationships within them, and then to perform a task where they infer how a target individual feels relative to others within that network. And so in our study, this is exactly what our participants did. As described by Meyer and Collier, participants first watched a 5-minute montage which introduced them to the characters in the show Orange is the New Black and the relationships between them. Specifically, they learned that Piper and Larry are in love and that they share a positive relationship, so that when one of these characters feels positively, the other one might feel positively as well. And they also learned that Piper has a lover, Claire, and that they also share a positive relationship. However, given the complex nature of this social network, they learned that Larry and Claire share a negative relationship because of this, and that when one of them feels negatively, the other one might feel positively. And they also learned that Nikki, Piper, and Claire are all friends, and that they have a positive relationship with one another, and that they also have a shared enemy in Tiffany. And so being able to manage and recall all of this highly socially relevant information is what we termed social working memory, which we argue is distinct from less socially relevant information, such as the alphabetical order of these names, which we termed non-social working memory. And so after watching this 5-minute montage, participants then completed a series of social and non-social working memory trials. Every trial followed a similar format where participants first had 4 seconds to encode or lock in the information, 4 seconds to reason to a response, and then up to 3 seconds to indicate their response by pressing the corresponding key. And so if we take this 2-load social working memory trial, for example, participants first had 4 seconds to encode that they should be reasoning how Claire feels relative to her friend Nikki, who feels negatively. They then had up to 4 seconds to reason that since Claire and Nikki are friends and that Nikki feels negatively, that Claire would also feel negatively. And then they had up to 3 seconds to press the 1 key as the correct answer on this trial to indicate that Claire's mental state would be negative. And 4-load trials followed a similar format, except this time participants were reasoning from left to right how a target character felt relative to 3 other characters. And non-social working memory trials followed a similar format, except this time participants were alphabetizing the names of 2 characters, following a special convention. So if we take this 2-load trial, for example, participants would first have 4 seconds to lock in that they should be reasoning, or that they should be alphabetizing Piper and Larry, starting with Larry since Larry has the anchor icon under his name. They would then have 4 seconds to reason that since the line started with Larry, Larry would be first and Piper would be second. And then finally, they would have up to 3 seconds to press the 2 key on this trial since Piper, the target character, is second in the alphabet line. And again, 4-load trials followed a similar format, except this time participants were alphabetizing the names of 4 characters instead of 2. And taking a classes culture approach, we hypothesized that lower social class would predict enhanced social working memory performance, but not non-social working memory performance. And so to test this, we recruited 190 online participants, all of whom were US nationals. Most of them were white, most of them were women, and they ranged in age from 25 to 83. They completed our tests of social and non-social working memory, and they also reported their self-identified social class in response to the following probe. This has been used in the past to study cultural differences amongst the social classes in America and has reliably shown meaningful social class differences in social cognition and attention. And as you can see in the sample from Prolific, most of our participants identified as either working or middle class. And so moving to the results, I'll focus on performance on 2-load trials for today. The results collapsing across load are identical, but the results were largely driven by performance on 2-load trials. And so to quickly orient you to the graph, on the x-axis we have our social class identity categories. On the y-axis we have the correct trial percentage. The solid line represents performance on social working memory trials, and the dotted line represents performance on non-social working memory trials. And as we can see, there's a significant interaction with social class, such that social class does not predict performance on non-social working memory trials. However, it significantly and negatively predicts performance on social working memory trials, such that those with lower social class outperform their higher social class counterparts. And moving forward, we're especially interested in investigating how social class can get under the skull to shape social working memory performance. For example, past work utilizing this task demonstrates that heightened activity in mentalizing regions of the brain, such as the DMPFC, is associated with enhanced social working memory performance. And this is the same region of the brain that lower class individuals have been shown to more actively recruit relative to their upper class counterparts when processing social information, such as faces. However, past work utilizing this task also shows that performance on non-social working memory trials is associated with disengagement in the DMPFC, but activation in the LPFC, suggesting that successful performance on these 2 tasks relies on partially distinct brain regions. And so with this in mind, one conceptual model that we can use to explain these effects is that since lower social class individuals exhibit heightened DMPFC activity, they should be particularly good at social working memory trials, which heavily recruit the DMPFC. And we're currently recruiting fMRI subjects for this work, and hopefully we'll have a pilot sample soon. And with that, I'd like to just give some acknowledgements to my mentor, Eric Knowles, and our collaborators, Keely Muscatel and Megan Meyer, and a special shout out to Megan for sharing the Orange is the New Black task with us. And with that, I'll open it to questions.